Hello, friends. It's Dr. John WorldPeace coming to you from Albuquerque, New Mexico, December the 5th. It's about 8:30 in the morning Mountain Time. Today I'm going to talk about Joe Biden and the twisted evangelical fundamentalist book of Revelation. 23/12/04 is the date. The Jews and Christian evangelical fundamentalists have Joe Biden's mind twisted into knots. Both the Jews and the radical right Christians are preventing Joe Biden from seeing clearly that the Muslims are being murdered by the Zionists with the money and arms provided by Joe Biden and America. Abraham had two sons, Ishmael, the father of Islam, and Isaac, the father of Judaism. As Adam had two sons, Cain and Abel, Cain being jealous of Abel, killed him. When God asked Cain where was Abel, Cain said he did not know, that he was not his brother's keeper. God was furious that Cain would lie to him and cursed Cain. Friends and fellow Americans, I will say to you that the Zionists are viciously killing their brothers and sister Muslims, and God is very angry. As God cursed Cain, God is about to bring another harsh judgment on Israel. The United States is aiding Israel in the murder of Muslims, and the repercussions are going to be great. Joe Biden is President of the United States, the chosen nation of God, and the light of the world is a nation where all religions, all races, all nationalities, all genders live in peace, albeit an imperfect peace at this time. Must immediately demand that Netanyahu end his murderous crimes against humanity in Gaza and withdraw immediately. Dr. John WorldPeace JD, the only advocate for Jesus Christ, John 14:25, and the only global advocate for peace and world peace in the world human society. Between the Jews and Muslims, God is on the side of the Muslims with regards to Gaza. The Americans were a primary force in World War II that ended the Nazi Holocaust of the Jews. The covenant between the Jews and God was that they would suffer the extermination of 6 million Jews at the hands of the Nazis, and then the Jews would have atoned for their crucifying Jesus, their Messiah. For their crucifixion of Jesus, God had the Romans raze Jerusalem and Solomon's temple and disperse the Jews out of Israel in 72 CE, 2,000 years ago. This is a historical fact. If the Jews claim God has the power to give them a nation when they entered Canaan, then God is the one who took it away and gave it to the Muslims. A secular view of 72 CE is that the Jews would not end their terrorism against Rome, and Rome did away with Jerusalem. From 72 CE to 1945, the land of Palestine was in possession of Palestinians and officially the Muslims since 600 CE. The modern world is not going to engage in a path of redrawing 2,000-year-old borders worldwide. That's not going to happen. This is going to be made clear with Israel and Palestine right now. The other part of the covenant between God and the Jews was that the Jews, based on their Holocaust experience, would become rabid global warriors for civil rights in all nations. They would take on the mission of ending racism and genocide globally. But the Jews decided to go down the evil path of becoming Nazi clones and ethnically cleanse Palestine of Palestinians. The progeny of Ishmael, the firstborn son of Abraham, and Ishmael's progeny Muhammad, who founded Islam. In 600 CE, God turned his back on the progeny of Isaac, the second-born son of Abraham, and gave the land of Israel and the Temple Mount to the Muslims to build the Dome of the Rock shrine and the Al-Aqsa Mosque in place of Solomon's temple. The Temple Mount had been without Solomon's temple for 625 years. There's nothing in the Bible or the words of Jesus that says the Jews were to take back, by interference of Harry Truman, the land of Palestine, formerly known as Israel. The Temple Mount is in the possession of the Muslims and has been for 1,450 years, and it's not going to be returned to the Jews. Period. Once Harry Truman signed off on a homeland for the Jews in Palestine that God gave the Muslims, the Jews adopted the radical right politics of Hitler and for 75 years began to forcibly take the land of Palestine from the Muslims and began to impose all the wrongs that the Nazis did to the Jews upon the Palestinians. The Jews forgot all about their covenant with God to become rabid global civil rights advocates. All the problems with the Jews and the Palestinians and the collateral Muslim nations in the Middle East had to do with the refusal of the British and Americans to specifically carve out borders of the new nation of Israel. The Jews were turned loose and financed by the United States and encouraged to take over as much of Palestine as they could. That unwritten policy of the U.S. remains in effect today, 75 years later. It does not matter what other nations in the world have done. The United States is the light of the world and the favored nation of God. Over 75 years against God's plan for the Palestinians through Muhammad, every American president has allowed the Jews to commit the atrocities against the Palestinian Muslims that they had endured from the Nazis. The Zionists have imprisoned children without criminal charges for throwing rocks. An abomination to God, and should be an abomination to all Americans. There's no justice in Israel for Palestinians. Never has been. Now we are seeing the end game of the Jews' anti-Semitic treachery against their Abraham brothers and sisters, the Muslim Palestinians. For the last 75 years, the Jews have encroached on Palestine that God gave to the Muslims officially in 600 CE, when he rose up Muhammad and allowed him to create a new religion of Islam. This is an event equivalent to God inspiring Abraham to create Judaism. God blessed the nation of Islam, and now there are 1.8 billion Muslims and only 16 million Jews, not to mention over 2 billion Christians. Let those who have eyes see. I've listed a video below on YouTube about the plans of the Jews with regard to the Temple Mount. They expect to take over the Temple Mount, raise the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and re-erect the Temple of Solomon, the third temple, and begin sacrificing and turn the clock back 2,000 years. Not going to happen. The Jews are ready to take the Temple Mount from the Palestinian Muslims, but they will never make that happen. The time is now for the United Nations to partition the ownership of the whole land of Palestine that existed in 1948. The Jews broke their World War II covenant with God, and they will never take possession of the Temple Mount. The time of the Zionists is fixed, and soon God will act, and whereas the Jews have made an open-air concentration camp out of Gaza for the Palestinians, God will cut down the Jews to the land inside the 1967 boundaries, if not less, and purge them from the rest of the land they have tried to steal from the Palestinians with absolute support of the United States. A nation of Palestine will be created, and all Palestinians from all the refugee camps will have the right of return. The racism of white Christian Americans that has been obvious with regards to the blacks and the genocide of Native Americans as through the false preachers of Christianity, and specifically regarding the false book of Revelations, have an alliance with the Jews, conspired to murder as many of the Palestinians as they can and take over all of Palestine. Without the Temple Mount, the Jews will never fully return to their glory before they crucify Jesus, which no one can deny was God's judgment and intent and has not changed. Every day more and more Palestinian blood is spilled by Netanyahu and supported by Joe Biden and all Americans, therefore putting a permanent strain on the light of the world, America. God will punish America for its support of merciless Zionists that will put an indelible bloody scar on the United States of America. Biden still has a short period to reverse course and stop the Zionist genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza, and I'm talking about weeks. I heard the voice of the Lord say, for what Biden has done, his betrayal of God's will as President of the United States, he will not serve a second term as president. He may be elected, but he will not be allowed to serve a full second term. Dr. John WorldPeace JD, the only advocate for Jesus Christ, John 14:25. My Christian website is located at kingofkingslordoflords.com. My flagship website is located at johnworldpeace.com. Contribute to World Peace at worldpeaceteachingpeace.com/contributions. I just looked at the news, and the Israeli Zionist assault on southern Gaza is worse than the assault on the north of Gaza. The lack of pushback on Netanyahu globally, but more particularly the United States of America, has let loose a very dark and evil monster. And there will be a change almost immediately. Enough is enough. Joe Biden, act or take America down with Zion. Enough blood. You go home, you have your grandchildren, you don't have to see your son or daughters running through the streets with the dead body of your grandchildren. Wake up. Enough is enough. The whole world has got to wake up. I'm John WorldPeace, the only global advocate for peace and world peace in the world human society. Enough is enough. Israel must be stopped now.